The last time I spoke to you, I described the problems my widowed mother faced during my childhood years when the two of us lived in 2 rooms at the top of a large house in a busy London street. On the same floor was another room occupied by 2 young men who were brothers and were out at work all day. We rarely saw them except at weekends. On the floor below lived an elderly couple whose name was Pease. I never saw the husband because he was an invalid, but often met the old lady on the landing as she moved from her kitchen to their bedroom, which was at the bottom of the staircase leading to our floor. As I had not started school in those early years, I had a very limited knowledge of the outside world and the activities of grown-ups. My life revolved round my simple pursuits, mainly located on the little carpet in front of the kitchen range. From the windows overlooking the busy main road, I would watch the world go by. Hours would be spent watching the horses pulling the laden carts, and the milkman with his churn, from which he ladled milk into cans which the women folk brought to him. Now and then a rattling tram-car went by, and I watched the sagging electric cables just below my window level sway as the trolley arm went by. When evening came, I would watch the lamplighter on his bicycle lift a long pole to the top of each gas lamp post and with a hook set the lamp alight. One by one the lights would light up as he gradually made his way up the hill, which stretched apparently endlessly through the houses. Motor cars were not very frequent. It was therefore quite an event when one stopped in front of our house. About the only one that ever did belonged to the man who sometimes visited Mr. and Mrs. Pease. He wore a hat with a very wide brim. Occasionally I would meet the man on the stairs, and the conversation was usually confined to "Hello, Sonny." One day when he called, I noticed that he had a long conversation with the landlady, who seemed to be very pleased about something. Later in the day, when my mother came home from work, the landlady took her aside. They had a long discussion, and I noticed that mother was showing a degree of reluctance to whatever was being discussed. I did not realize the significance of the episode until a few weeks later, when my mother explained that we were to use the room where the 2 brothers normally slept because our main room was going to be used by a special visitor. So my mother's few treasures and my teddy bear and other items which were an important element of my life were put into boxes and carried into the little room I had never been in before. The newcomer duly arrived. She was a young woman who was nice to look at and spoke with a clearer voice than anyone else I had ever met. I used to meet her on the stairs. Once I was sliding down the banisters when she came in, but she smiled instead of grumbling at me. Sometimes we talked about the cat and the kittens, and my teddy bear and other important things like that. In the end, I asked Mother why the lady was staying in our best room. She explained that she was an actress who was performing that week at the Wood Green Empire and needed to have somewhere nearby to stay. I asked her what an actress was, and Mother said she sang and recited on the stage. That got me thinking. Would she like to hear one of my recitations, I asked. Or I could sing her a song, I volunteered. Mother did not seem to think she would have the time. About the middle of the week, Mrs. Penry, our landlady, told me that she had a special surprise. Would you like to go to the theatre, she asked. The kind lady has given me some tickets for a matinee, she informed me. I did not know what a matinee was, but you can have 3 guesses to what my reply was. I went. I had never been inside a theatre before. In fact, I had never before been inside so large a building. I marvelled at the rows and rows of people, all sitting on nice soft seats and all looking straight in front. Then some people, all dressed up, did all sorts of things on a floor much higher than ours, and with huge bright curtains that moved without anyone touching them. We sat near the front, and Mrs. Penry kept telling me not to keep looking round to stare at the people in the row behind. She said it was rude. But that was before the show started. I marvelled at the magicians and acrobats and rows of laces dancing and kicking their legs high in the air, and I wanted to try it, but Mrs. Penry wouldn't let me. Then the curtain came open again, and there was a lovely room with posh furniture, and the nice lady who was staying in our room came on in a lovely dress, much prettier than any I had ever seen before. I wanted to wave, but Mrs. Penry stopped me. At the end of the afternoon, all the performers came to the front of the platform, and everyone clapped and clapped. Then the lady who was staying in our room came in front of all the others, and the people clapped a lot more. And then do you know what she did? She looked down to where I was sitting and blew me a kiss and laughed. Most nights, long after I had gone to bed in the lodger's room, some of the actors clattered up the stairs to our best room, and we could hear them banging on Mother's piano, and Mother was not happy about all the noise. After the week was over, we went back to our best room, and Mother was very upset because they had bent her brass fender and left cigarette burns on the furniture. She said she would never agree to let the room again. I never again saw the man with the big hat and posh car. A few weeks later, Mrs. Penry called up the stairs to Mother and said, "Come down and look at this." Mother hurried down the stairs, and I followed her. Mrs. Penry had a newspaper in her hand and showed Mother the front page. I had not yet learned to read, but recognized at once the picture of the man with the big hat, and another picture of a roadway with a wrecked motor car. I recognized the motor car, although it was all twisted up. Mother read the headlines out loud. "Famous theatre impresario, a maker of many well-known British films, dies in road crash." Mother gasped. "Poor Mr. and Mrs. Pease," she said. The man in the car crash was named Pease. That must have been his parents. So that is why he had called regularly to see the old couple on the first floor. I later learned that he'd been one of the British film pioneers.